Okay, so we are right at 10 o'clock, so we are going to go ahead and get started with our webinar today. So I want to say thank you to everyone who is here and present. Thank you for attending today's training. My name is Amy Jewett, and I am the Invasive Species Coordinator here at the Pennsylvania Natural Heritage Program. And I'm going to be talking to you today about the new version of iMapInvasives, which we refer to as iMapInvasives 3.0. Just want to go over a few quick things before I get started. If you're on the webinar, please make sure to mute yourself throughout the training. There will be a time at the end that you can ask questions, either using your computer's microphone or using the chat feature here in the webinar. So hold your questions until that time. Also, I am recording today's webinar, so if you would like to listen to this again, share it with others that you know. That will be sent out afterwards, so you'll have access to that recording and also a copy of the PowerPoint. So with that said, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, save your questions till the very end, please, and I'll address them at that time. Okay, so I first want to get started just briefly going over what is iMapInvasives. So the basic components of the program have not changed. There is some new features to the database, but the overall basis of what the program is still basically the same for those of you that are already familiar with it. And for those of you who might not be familiar with it, this will be a good overview for you. So iMap is a free online database that anyone can use, and it's used to do various things. So one of the things that it's mostly known for is to be able to document where you're finding invasive species in Pennsylvania. You can also learn about locations of invasive species that are not only in Pennsylvania, but also in states around us, as well as in the rest of the nation. You can use it to document where you're doing control and eradication efforts. So it's not just documenting where you're finding things, but also the management that you're implementing to try to control these species. You can also use it to look at where other people are finding species to then prioritize your own survey and management efforts for the coming year. You can use it to share distribution data and management efforts with others, maybe some folks that you're working with. So because it's a platform that anyone has access to, you can easily share data with it. And then also it's a platform that is used to promote early detection and rapid response species and initiatives. So again, if we're finding species that are not yet known to be in Pennsylvania, this is a platform where we can document those findings and then share that out with other people. So what species are tracked in iMap? So it is an all-taxa data management system. It's not just plant-based. So we do track several different types of species, including terrestrial plants, wetland and aquatic plants, insects, mammals, invertebrates, and reptiles and amphibians. But if you happen to find an invasive species that is not on our list, you can let me know and we will consider adding it as a tracked species. But you have to keep in mind that the species does have to meet the basic definition of what an invasive species is. And that is a species that is non-native to Pennsylvania and is known to cause harm in some way, either to the economy, the environment, or to human health. So if it's just like a species that is more of a nuisance, but maybe it's a native species, that would not be meeting the definition of an invasive species. So it actually has to be non-native and known to cause harm in some way. So right now in our program, in the Pennsylvania iMap program, we are tracking right around 400 species. So we do have a lot to choose from on our list right now. Okay, so let's go over what are some of the key features, what are the key components of the iMap program. So something that's new as far as the iMap 3.0 version that just got launched recently in April is iMap now displays an America's view of data. And so that includes all of North, South, and Central America, as well as the Caribbean. So you can choose to enter data that you're finding in any state, province, or country that is part of that America's view. You're not limited to just Pennsylvania. So for data that's entered in a state or a province or a country that does not have an active iMap administrator, such as myself for Pennsylvania, then that data will likely remain unconfirmed for the time being, but you still are able to submit it. So just for your reference. And so just so you know, the active participating states and provinces that we currently have on board with the iMap network include Oregon, Arizona, Pennsylvania, New York, Maine, Kentucky, and Saskatchewan in Canada. So those are our active jurisdictions at this point in time. iMap is also now a platform that can be used on your mobile device. So previously, the older version of iMap was only accessible on a desktop computer, but now the new iMap 3.0 database is also mobile friendly, which is wonderful. Now just bear in mind, what I'm referring to here is actually separate from the iMapInvasives mobile app, which some of you might be familiar with already. So the app is just basically a separate entity from the database, but it is a tool that links so that you can use it to submit data to the database itself. So what I'm referring to here is the actual online version of the database that is accessible both on a desktop computer as well as a mobile device. Okay, so the rest of these key components are basically the same as what the older version of iMap was that most of you are probably familiar with. Some of these screenshots are a little new though, because the look and feel of the database did change when we launched the new version in April. So again, looking at using iMap to document your invasive species findings, it's pretty easy to do. You can document things that you're finding in your local area or region. And so looking at some of these screenshots, we can view places where a specific invader has been found. So in this map here on the left-hand side, only data for purple loosestrife is being shown. So you can document and then do some basic querying to kind of look at the information that is most relevant to you. You can also zoom into a particular region to see what invasive species have been found in your county or town. And there's also a special tool, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go through today's training, that's called the Identify Measure tool, that you basically can draw a polygon around a certain set of data and then actually be able to see a table view of what species are actually there. Because just looking at the map, you can only see the symbology. You can see the points and the lines and the polygons, but you can't necessarily see all at once what species you're actually looking at. So that Identify Measure tool is really handy. Okay, so also we talked a little bit at the beginning about using iMap to prioritize your future survey and treatment efforts. So essentially, it's a tool that lets you hone in on specific areas that are important to you and to identify high priority species that may have been found there, and then use that information to then go about planning future treatment efforts that you might be interested in doing. So for example, in this screenshot here on the right-hand side, we can see where water chestnut has been reported in Pennsylvania by looking at the various dots on the map. And then we can use that information to then prioritize, okay, maybe there's an area nearby that doesn't have any dots. We want to survey to see if there is water chestnut there, or we want to use the information that's already present to conduct some type of treatment. And so this particular screenshot is a view of southeast Pennsylvania, where we know that unfortunately it's sort of a hot spot for water chestnut. So it is important in that regard because you can use your data, you can use data that's submitted by others to basically help you plan for the work that you'd like to accomplish. So you can also do basic custom querying tools as well as some data analysis. So essentially, you're putting iMap to work for you. So you can use it to find that distribution of a specific species that's important to you, or just an array of species in a particular area of interest. Or again, you can use it to locate areas that have little or no data and set a goal to find and report the species that you're finding in that location. I do want to just mention for everyone's reference that right now, currently, only basic querying capabilities exist. We do not have a full array of querying ability at this point, but that is being developed currently. So we hope that by sometime this fall or winter, we will have more advanced and custom queries that will be available to you. So right now it's just a very basic querying capability. And I'll show you guys a little bit more of what I mean by that as we keep going through the training today. Okay, so another important key component of the iMap program is it's used to detect these newly arrived species by allowing users to set up to set up email alerts. And so by doing this, you can customize maybe a particular species that you're interested in, or you can say, I'm interested in this particular area, notify me when any species is reported there. So you can customize your alerts to however you want to. And then when something is reported to the database, if it triggers the alert that you set up, then you would get a email sent to your inbox, which is a really nice way to keep track of what you're most interested in. And then also another really important feature of the database is that we are incorporating data from multiple sources. It's not just coming from, a particular agency or multiple, state agencies or just nonprofits. It's really coming from all sorts of places. And so we do have nonprofits, cooperative weed management areas, state agencies, school groups, environmental consultants, and even citizen scientists, which are a really important group of people that are all contributing data to iMapInvasives. And so in my opinion, these diversified data sources are helping to make the database much more well-rounded and stronger, because we do have these various people that are contributing. Okay, so I do want to take a little bit of time and just talk about the Pennsylvania iMap program specifically. So I wanted to show you who is on the back end of iMap. So I'm here on the left-hand side, Amy Jewett. Mostly when people interact with the iMap program here in Pennsylvania, you're interacting with me either through a training like what we're doing today or through email. And so I'm kind of the face of the program. But we do have some other folks that work on the back end of iMap as well. Kirsten Carlson she does iMap as well as data management for the Pennsylvania Natural Heritage Program. So she is doing a lot of work as far as tracking where we're finding our rare, threatened, and endangered species in our state, but then she also has time on the iMap program as well. And then Mary Walsh, also with the Pennsylvania Natural Heritage Program, her full-time position is an aquatic zoology coordinator, but she is one of the main people that helps to keep our program funded. So she will do a lot of the grant writing and grant reports that we need to do for our program. So she's definitely a very vital component to this. But altogether, the three of us comprise the iMapInvasives program here in Pennsylvania. So in Pennsylvania specifically, iMap does serve as a statewide invasive species repository, but it is not an official database that's being used by all Pennsylvania-based organizations. It's simply an option that's out there if you'd like to utilize it for either yourself or your organization. It's a tool in your tool belt, but it's not something that's being mandated for use by everybody in the state. As we talked about already, it does provide multiple tools that you can use to record distribution information as well as invasive species management efforts. And it does provide this really nice consolidated single system where multiple organizations and people can gather and share their data in this one single platform. Okay, so next we're going to talk about basically a snapshot of what the database looks like as well as its structure. How is it made to be used by you guys as the registered users? So in the new version, in iMapInvasives 3.0, when you first log in, this is the screen that you'll see. And you'll see up at the top, there's a row of buttons. And I want to talk a little bit about what each of those buttons mean so that you know a little bit more about them. So starting from the left and going to the right, the first button is the Create Record, and that's where you're going to go to enter your invasive species findings as well as your associated management efforts. The Find Record button is where you go to access individual records for all data types by looking up records by their unique identification number. And then the Filter Records button is where you can go to filter for data on a specific species or multiple species. And then continuing over from going more towards the right-hand side, the Identify Measure tool. This is a tool that you can use to measure distance on the map or a particular size of an area. And you can also use it to view what data is already in a particular location. So for example, if you have data that you're looking at on the map and you're seeing the dots and the polygons, but you're not actually knowing what species they're representing, you can use that Identify Measure tool to draw a polygon around the data that you're interested in, and then use that to actually figure out what species are there that you're looking at. So it's really handy. Also, we have an export button. So something that's new to iMapInvasives 3.0 is you can now download any data that we have available in the database as long as it's not marked confidential. And so previously you were only able to download your own information. If you wanted to access other information, you had to submit a specific data request to me as the administrator. But now you don't have to do that anymore. And that was done on purpose. We wanted to data requesting a specific data set from me. And then also there's a layers button, and the layers button allows you to change the base map, which there's multiple base layers to choose from. You can turn on and off different types of data, so whether it's presence or not detected or treatment, you can pick and choose what information you'd like to look at. And then also you can show or hide the map legend. And we're going to go into more details on all of that as we go through the training. So a basic structure, the basic structure of the iMap program is as follows, and we're going to go through each data type one by one. So if you're out in the field and you see an invasive species, how you're going to incorporate that into iMap is by plotting its location as a presence point. And each presence point, once it's confirmed, is represented as a green dot on the map. And you can enter presence data using either a desktop computer, your mobile device, or also the iMap mobile app as well. So if you're out in the field and you see a large patch of something and you want to record the infestation size of that patch, you would create a presence polygon or a line. And you can do that either with the desktop computer or your mobile device. The mobile app is not, you can't use the app to create polygons and lines. It's only used to create points at this point in time. And these are represented as a green polygon or line on the map. If you would like to record absence information, if you were out searching for a particular species and you did not find it, you would add that information as a not detected record. Again, that's represented as a yellow dot, polygon, or line on the map. And you can use either a desktop computer, mobile device, or the mobile app to record not detected information. If you were out and you were conducting a treatment of some sort, you would add a treatment record. You can add treatment information to iMap using either a desktop computer or a mobile device. You cannot use the mobile app at this time to enter that information. And treatment data is represented as brown polygons on the map. Okay, so for most of you, I think you already do have a login account. But for those of you that do not, keep in mind that in order to utilize the database, you do need to request a free login account. And the way that you do that is by visiting one of these two websites. You can go to iMapInvasives.org, and there's a login button at the top. If you click on that, it will take you to a sign-in sheet where you can register for an account. Or you can go to iMapInvasives.org and click on the register button, which is at the top right-hand side of the screen on the home page. So again, login account is required in order to utilize the database. And you'll also need a login account in order to utilize the iMap mobile app, which we're not going to talk about too much today, but just keep in mind that if you are wanting to use the app, you do need a login account as well. And that login account is going to be the same login account no matter if you're on the mobile app or you're actually on the online version of iMapInvasives. It will be the same across the board. So once you are signing up for an account, this will be the screen that you're looking at. So you just want to fill in that information. And then once you submit your request for an account, you should receive a separate email afterwards asking you to confirm your account. You want to make sure that you receive that email, because if you don't, it means that your account isn't active. So just keep that in mind. If you don't receive that email, just let me know. We'll get things straightened out. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about some specifics of the iMap 3 program. I first want to talk about the online data entry for how to record presence findings. So if you're out in the field and you're finding an invasive species, this is how you would go about recording it in the new version of iMapInvasives. So once you're logged in, you would go to that top part of the screen where it says Create Record, and you're going to click on that button. And so if you search for and detected a particular species, you're going to then choose the option that's titled Single Presence, which will appear once you click on that Create Record button. And from there, you're given options of how you want to record your presence data. So you can record it either as a point, a polygon, or a line. And depending on the either the size of the amount of species that you're finding or the area where you're finding will kind of dictate which one you choose. So if you found a single species or a very sparse population, you would probably want to create a point. If you found a really large infested area of something, you would probably want to create a polygon. Or if you were walking along a trail or a riparian corridor, you probably want to create a line in that case, because just of the path that you're taking, it probably would make the most sense to do that. So those would be your options, either a point, a polygon, or a line. So in this example that I'm going to show you, we're going to be creating a point. So what you would first want to do is zoom into the map close to the area where you made your observation, or you would enter coordinates, so either one. And then once you're zoomed into the area where you made your observation, you would click on the map to mark your location, or if you submitted coordinates, you would click that submit button. Okay, so you can do that either way, either enter coordinates or actually just pick a spot on the map and just click. And then if you want to, you are able to create a buffer around the point that you just made, which would further delineate the area that you essentially searched and did find something there. Next, you're going to actually choose the species that you found. You can type that into iMap either using the common name or the scientific name. Either one will be fine. And then you're going to want to select the observer. So if it was yourself, then you will come up as the default selection. If you are entering data for someone else, you can certainly select their name from the observer list. They do need to be a registered user in order for their name to appear, so just keep that in mind. And then the date will default to today's date. If you were entering data that was collected maybe a few days ago, change that date if you needed to, but it will default to today's date. And then if you want to, you can tag your observation under a particular project name. This is optional. You do not need to necessarily tag your observations under a project, but it is an option to you. And we'll talk a little bit more about projects as we go through the training. But again, just for your reference, projects provide a way that will essentially organize data into a group that can then be easily searched for or downloaded within iMap itself. They also provide a nice way for multiple agencies to submit and share data for a common initiative, which then that data can be separated out from everything else, and you can look at just that information. So it makes querying for just specific data sets pretty easy to do. And then this is really important. Make sure that you're adding at least one or more photos to your observation, and you're including a photo credit. Without photographs, we are not able to confirm your record in the database, because we need to actually look at what you were looking at, essentially. And just make sure that if you are adding pictures, that you're adding pictures of the species that specifically you are looking at that point in time. If you're adding pictures from your photo library in your mobile device, for example, make sure that it's not, a photo of a species found elsewhere. We want to make sure that for each record that you're entering a photo correlated are the less distinguishing characteristics that self or an expert reviewer can make out. And so it's really difficult for us to be able to confirm a record if we're not able to really see it very well. So because you can add up to 5 pictures, I would encourage you, make sure that you're taking photos from various angles of what you're looking at. So if it's a plant, take a photo from more of an aerial view, then kind of get at it from the side, get down on the ground, maybe take a picture from the underside of the plant. Just make sure that you're including those special distinguishing characteristics so that we can accurately identify what it was that you were looking at. So again, just keep that in mind. Also, make sure that you're not taking blurry photographs. We get a lot of that happens sometimes. People will not necessarily realize that the photo that they're taking is blurry, and then it gets uploaded, and that's the only photo that we have to utilize, and we can't make an accurate data confirmation from that photograph. So make sure that you're holding your camera or your phone very still and taking a really clear photograph. That's very important. Okay, so back to our data record. So as you keep going through, after you've entered your photograph, you want to fill in any additional data fields as appropriate, along with any relevant comments. So in this screenshot, we can see it's asking for the number of plants that I found, the percent cover, information on the distribution of the species, and then any relevant comments. And so I filled all that in just based on an example to show you guys. There is an option to enter advanced data, and some of those advanced data questions include an evaluation type. So for the example that I'm showing you here, this was more of a casual or an incidental finding as far as the evaluation. Information on follow-up. So is there plans to do management for what I'm finding? Yes or no? And then also repository information. So are you collecting a specimen? Is that specimen getting sent to a museum somewhere? And so that is also information that you can add if you would choose. Once you've entered all of that information, both the basic and or the advanced information, you will be presented with a summary of what you just entered. I would encourage you to make sure to look that over, make sure everything is in there that you would like to be in there. And if you forgot something or you made a mistake, you can go back to make changes. But once you're ready, you can click the complete button at the bottom of that little area to submit your record to the database. Once you submit your record, you'll receive a notification window that says that your record has been saved. And you'll also be presented with 2 identification numbers, which will show you basically the way of how to query for that particular record later on if you would like to do that. So you have the presence record identification number, and you also have a searched area record number. And just for your reference, the way that the new iMap 3 platform is set up is every record that's created automatically has a searched area record that gets created along with it. So we basically just created a presence record, and now a searched area record comes along with it. And that serves as sort of a foundation or a base record for your presence record. But really what you're mainly concerned about is that presence record identification number. So I would say that's probably the more important of the two to make sure that you jot down. So if you'd like to, you can actually click right on that presence record identification number to then access its information. So it will pull up a page that looks a lot like this. You'll see the date, the observer, the species. So all that information that you just entered is now created in this record. If you'd like to make updates, you can click on the edit button in the upper right-hand corner. And then as you look down the page a little bit, there's a section that says edit record again. And it will kind of open up the record for you, because a lot of it is hidden just to keep the screen space minimal and not take up too much on the screen. But if you click that edit button, you'll be able to see the picture, you'll be able to see all the other information that you entered for that. And you can make edits as you'd like to, and then make sure that you just save everything when you're finished. Okay, so that was our presence record. The next record I'd like to talk about is the not detected data entry. So that's when you search for species and you did not find it. And this type of data can be entered on your desktop computer, mobile device, also the mobile app as well. But we're not going to talk too much about the mobile app today. We're going to talk mainly about the actual online version of iMap. So similar to how you would go about when you first are creating a presence record, same thing for not detected. You want to click on that create record button near the top of the screen. Only this time, because we want to enter absence data, we're going to choose the button that says single not detected. Again, you're going to be presented with the choice of whether you want to enter a point, a polygon, or a line. So you can make your selection from there. And in this example, we're going to be creating a polygon. Since I already showed you how to create a point, now we're going to do a polygon. So first you would zoom into the map close to the area where you searched. And depending on where you are, you can choose to change the base map if it's easier to see. So that's why the view here looks a little bit different than from before. So once you have found your area where you want to create your polygon, you would then actually go ahead and actually draw your polygon and then hit next. And now you're going to choose the species that you searched for but you did not find. So you can select either one species or multiple species depending on what you had in mind. So in this example, I'm selecting that I searched for and did not find two particular species, hydrilla and water chestnut. It's going to ask you for the amount of time that you spent searching. So in this example, I'm saying that I searched this particular water body for 10 minutes. It's going to continue to ask you for information for additional data fields, including the observer, the date, and any project. So again, if you'd like to record your record under a particular project, you can do that, but it is optional. You do not have to record your data under a project if you don't want to. Also, you can add one or more photos of the area that you searched, which then resulted in that absence finding. These photos should essentially depict the area being free of the species that you searched for. So in any photos that I take, there would not be hydrilla or water chestnut present, but it may show other species that are present. But again, maybe I wasn't concerned with those, and I only wanted to document this absence data for these two species. Then it's going to ask you for a reason for why you did not detect the species. So if that's relevant for you to mention, you can do that. In this case, the reason field did not necessarily supply the answer I was looking for. So I just use the comments box to simply say, I searched for this species and I just didn't find it. So once you fill in that relevant information for why you didn't detect the species, you can go on to the next part. And that's going to be your summary, just like before with the presence data where you're given a summary to look at all the information that you just entered. If you find any mistakes or something that you forgot to add, you can hit the back button to go back and make any changes that you'd like to make. Then once you're ready to finish up your record, you can hit that complete button and it will submit it to the database. Once you submitted your record, you'll receive a notification that your record was saved. And again, you'll receive 2 identification numbers, which will identify your not detected record as well as its associated search area. So for the time being, I would recommend that you jot down those numbers for use in querying later on. Okay, and then also if you'd like to, you can click right on the not detected record identification number to access its information. And you can make edits as needed by clicking on the edit button that's there in the top right-hand corner of the screen, just like before with the presence record. Okay, and the next record type that we're going to talk about is a treatment record. So this is how you're going to document the areas that you're conducting management efforts by creating 1 or more of these treatment polygons. So again, we're going to go up to that Create Record button that's at the top of your screen when you're logged in. And you're going to choose that single treatment button that's available there to document where you're actually conducting management efforts at. Once you select that button, it's going to ask you to choose the species that were actually treated. So you can choose to select 1 or multiple species. So in this example, I'm choosing English ivy and winter creeper as the 2 species that were treated. Next, you're going to draw either a polygon or a line to indicate the area that was treated. So to do that, you're going to zoom into the map to your designated area prior to drawing your polygon. Also, just want to make a note that the species that you're saying you treated, they already need to be marked in iMap as presence records. If they are not there, the treatment record will probably ask you to go back in and mark those species as presence records, because in order to treat something in iMap, it actually needs to see that that point is already there. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And then just like the other records we talked about, you're going to begin to fill in the data entry fields that are relevant to what you did. So it's going to first ask you for the date. So when did the treatment begin and end on? It's going to ask if this was an initial or a follow-up treatment. It's going to ask for lead contact information as well as that person's affiliated organization. So if that's you, you can put your name in and your organization. If that's someone else, you can put their name in. As long as they are a registered user, their name will show up. If they are not a registered user with iMap, their name will not show up. So keep that in mind. And then also it will ask you what the goals were for this treatment effort. So in this example, I'm saying the main goal was to suppress these species, but you can select multiple goals. You're going to continue filling in the data fields as you go through. So it's going to ask you for, if you want to list any specific comments about this treatment. Were there any rare species precautions that you had to take? What was going on with permits? Did you have anything related to permits to this treatment that you would have to mark down? And then also it gives you an option to supply photos as well. Also, if the treatment effort involves someone that was local, so maybe you're an outside organization coming into an area, but you partnered with someone that was local to that area. So if that was the case, make sure that you're putting their name and affiliated organization down as well. Next, you're going to select the type of treatment that you actually did. So here the options are going to be either physical, chemical, or biological. So in this example, I chose a physical treatment type. And so that would be things like manual pooling of species. In this example, I'm saying we used animals to help graze an area, and then afterwards we did planting of native species. And then because I chose graze, it wants to know the types of animals, so I said we utilize goats. You can also go into detail about the breeds, the number of animals you use, and the days that they were grazing. So again, depending on which type you choose, and then the specific type of treatment that you actually did, it will give these specific fields that you can fill out. And then just like before with the other treatment, or I'm sorry, with the other data records, it will provide you with a summary of the data that you just entered. So you can look through that, make sure everything looks accurate. If you did see any mistakes or any other things that you forgot to add, just hit that back button to go back to previous screens and make your desired changes. Okay, and then once you're ready, the summary looks good, you would just hit that complete button to submit your record to the database. And then once you've submitted your record, you'll receive a notification that your record was saved. And then you'll also be given those 2 identification numbers just as before. Again, that's going to be specific to this treatment record that you just created. If you want to, you can click right on that treatment ID number. It'll hyperlink to your specific record that you just created. And if you'd like to make edits at that point, you can do so by clicking that edit button that's up at the top right part of the screen. Okay, so there is one other basically record type that you can choose from, and I just want to mention that so you realize what that is. So it's called the multi-record searched area. And essentially what that is if you want to take a particular location and say, I made multiple presence records here, or I made multiple not detected records here, and also did some treatments at the same time. You can use that multi-record searched area tool to put all those records into iMap at the same time, rather than going through and doing each one individually like I just showed you. So just as before, you'd click that create record button, and then choose that multiple record searched area tool. And then just as I was showing you with the other data types, it will present you with various data fields that you would fill in as appropriate, just as we demonstrated before. So keep that in mind. If you want to enter multiple types of data all at once, rather than doing it separately, that's going to be the tool that you use to do that. Okay, so we talked about how to enter this data. Now I want to talk a little bit about actually viewing data on the map, how you visualize species distributions, both on a statewide scale as well as on a local scale. So when you're viewing data in iMapInvasives and when you're logged in, you're automatically given a screen that looks like this big map here that you see in the screenshot on the middle of the page. And that map has hexagons on it that's essentially telling you that data exists at this location, but because it's at such a zoomed out scale, it can't show you specific data, at least not yet until you zoom in. So these larger hexagons that you're seeing essentially represent a higher concentration of data at that location. And then the smaller the hexagons are, it just is representing that a smaller amount of data exists at that place. So in order to actually get at the specific data, there's points, lines, and polygons. You want to choose an area and just kind of zoom in on it. And so you would do that by using the current data querying tools that we have available. You could zoom in on the map and then filter for what you were interested in actually looking at. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we keep going through. So when you're looking at specific data on the map, you want to make sure that you're zoomed in far enough past the point of the hexagons to actually see this information. Because at the hexagon view, like as we can see here in this screenshot, your points, lines, and polygons, which represent your presence, not detected, and treatment data, they cannot be turned on in the layers section, at least not yet, until you keep zooming in a little bit further. So here at this view, I'm zoomed in far enough past the hexagons that I can now turn on in the layers section of the legend all these different data types. And as you click on each one of those in that layers section, you'll notice that they start appearing on the map. If something doesn't appear on the map that you think should appear, just open up that layers section and double check to make sure that it is actually turned on, because oftentimes that's the reason why something isn't showing up. So just make sure that all that data is clicked on that you would like to see. And also the legend will help you to understand what kind of data that you're actually looking at. So for example, all of those green dots that you're seeing on the map right now represent confirmed present species. There might be a few records on there that are pink in color. Those represent unconfirmed present species. So records that have been submitted to the database but have not yet been reviewed and confirmed by myself as the administrator. You'll see there's at least one yellow polygon. There might also be some yellow dots on there as well. That's going to represent your absence information. So species that were searched for, or an area that was searched for a particular species and it wasn't found to be there. There's also a bunch of orange dots on the map. They represent approximate information. So these are records that do not have precise GPS coordinates. They are more there as a representation that this species was found somewhere in this area, but it wasn't actually found at a specific point. And then also, I don't think we can see this in this particular screenshot, but for any brown polygons or lines that you would see, those are going to represent your treatments. I mentioned this before, but I wanted to show you what this actually looks like. So multiple base layers are available for use when you're using iMap 3.0. So you can just select whichever one you prefer. Oftentimes, whatever kind of data that you're looking at will sort of dictate which base layer makes the most sense. So here we can see some are a little bit lighter in color, some are a little bit darker, like the satellite. And you can just sometimes see the data better either on a lighter background or a darker background. Also, the information that the maps are showing you will probably be a factor in which one you want to utilize as well. So just know that you're not limited to one. There is multiple that you can utilize. Okay, I do want to talk a little bit also about data querying. So right now in the database, it is somewhat restricted as far as the types of queries that you can do, but there is more advanced data querying options that will become available later this year. They're being developed right now by NatureServe, who runs the back end of iMap. So I'm going to talk about how you can query to find specific records or specific species and their distributions on the map. So first we'll talk about how you query for your specific records. So as I was going through and demonstrating how to create each of those record types, I did note to make sure that if you'd like to go back and find that particular record, make sure that you're jotting down that ID number, either that presence ID number, that not detected ID number, or the treatment ID number. So once you're on the main page in iMap, you're going to click the button that says Find Record. And in the type field, you'll choose whichever type of record it was, whether it was presence, not detected, treatment, or you're looking for the associated search area. So you'll type in the number that's associated with the record you're interested in, and then click on the Find button. And once you click on the Find button, your record will be shown. It'll show up on the map. The map will sort of zoom into that area where the record is located. And it will also have a table that will appear near the bottom of the screen. And it will show you, kind of going from left to right on that table, it will show you the ID number. So in this case, we were looking for a not detected record. It will show you the species that were associated with that. So here we can see this record had 2 species that I searched for and didn't find. That's why 2 rows of data are showing up, but it has the same record ID number. It also shows you the date associated with that record, the observer name, and it also gives you an option to look at the record itself, which is that Details button. So you can actually click on that details button, and then it would open up the record itself, and you could look at it from there. So that's how you search for a particular record. If you're looking for a particular species, you would go back to that main map page and click on the button that says Filter Records. And then from there, you're given a species name box that you would choose the species that you're interested in. And you could choose that either by a common or a scientific name. You can also choose to look at multiple species at once, or you can just choose to do filter button. In this case, we're looking for data on wavy leaf basket grass. And so once you would click that button, it's going to show you more of a zoomed out view, like before, where we're looking at just those orange hexagons. But I want to look at the specific data associated with it. So I know that I need to keep zooming in a little bit farther to actually see those specific points, polygons, and lines that might be present for that species. So here in the screenshot on the right-hand side, we can see there's a few big polygons, and there's a few dots there that are associated with data related to wavy leaf basket grass. So just keep that in mind. If you're at the hexagon view, you know you need to keep zooming in a little bit farther until you can see that more specific data. Also, I mentioned this before, but now you can sort of see it in action just with these screenshots, is you can use that Identify Measure tool, which is also up there at the top of the screen on the main page, to see the specific data that we're actually looking at. So right now all I can see is there's a few polygons and some points, but I actually want to know, what is that? Like, I know it's data for wavy leaf basket grass, but I want to know who found it. I want to know when it was found. And I want to access records at once if I'd like to. So what you would do is click on that Identify Measure tool, and then it gives you an option to say either area or distance. And so I want to know what's in this particular area. So I choose the area button, and I draw a polygon around that particular set of data that I'm interested in. Once I complete drawing that polygon, it gives me an option to say, see what's here. And so once I click on that button, it will bring up a table of all of that data all at once, and I can see it very easily. So it makes it much easier to understand what data I'm actually looking at, because it will bring up that table view of information. And so here we can see that table, what I was mentioning. We can see that, of course, this is all data for wavy leaf basket grass, but I can see the various dates that it was found on. I can see the observer name. And if I wanted to learn a little bit more, I could click on those details buttons and open up each record individually. Also keep in mind where this red arrow is pointing here, there's various tabs that you can click on. So right now, I'm only seeing data for the presence records. But if there's data here for not detected, which I know there is because there's some yellow polygons here, I can click on the not detected species tab, and then I can see the data associated with that. So make sure that you're also clicking on those other tabs as well, because those will show you different information, just depending on what you circled in your polygon that you drew. Okay, so let's move on. Another topic I wanted to talk about today was email alerts. And so this is how you can stay up to date on findings of specific species or species that are found in a particular area of interest. So the way that you would go about setting up an email alert is you go back out to that main page, the one that you see as soon as you log in. And then over on the left-hand side, there's a menu that you can choose from. If you open up that menu, one of the options you'll see is email alerts. And so you can click on that, and it will bring up a page that looks similar to this. It gives you a general section, and it also gives you a section that says add or edit alerts. So because I want to create something new, I'm going to say add edit alerts. So in that general section, that's kind of a section of information where it's specific to the data structure of iMap. and when something gets added to a particular either project or an organization or record is updated. So you can choose from any of those options and say, I want to be alerted when one of these things happens. So your options are: a record you create has been updated, a presence record you create is the first of its species recorded in the region, a record is added in an organization you are a part of, or a record is added in a project that you are a part of. So you can choose to be alerted via an email alert when any of these things is true. So if you're not interested in any of that, that's fine. You can just choose not to be alerted by any of those things, click save, and you won't receive any email alerts for that. But if you do want to, check any of those that make sense, and then click the save button. So past that kind of more general section, you can set up more customized email alerts. And the way you'll do that is to click on that button that says add an alert. Once you click on that, you'll see something that looks like this. A new alert section will appear on your screen. So based on the type of alert that you'd like to set up, it's going to ask you to assign it a name. And this is just specific to whatever you want to call it, so that you can differentiate between the various alerts that you have set up. So in this example, I'm going to show you the premise for what I'd like to do is to set up an alert for any invasive species that I find in a particular location. And this particular location is going to be in North Park, which is here in Allegheny County, located in McCandless Township. So because that's the type of alert I want to set up, I'm going to name this alert Invasives in North Park. Again, that can be whatever you want it to be, just based on you understanding what the alert is about. Next, it's going to ask you for the frequency that you would like to receive these notifications for this alert. So you can choose from either immediate, daily, or weekly. For my purposes, I'm going to say I only need to be notified on a weekly basis. I don't need to have daily emails necessarily, and I don't need something immediately. But if you wanted to have any of those three options, you can choose whatever makes the most sense for you. Also related to frequency, it's going to ask you for the day and the time that you would like to receive your alerts on. So you can get to be very specific as far as when you can expect to receive a notification. So in this example, I'm going to say notify me midweek on Wednesday, first thing in the morning at 9 a.m. Now you're actually going to choose the criteria for your email alert. So because I'm interested in learning about any species that was found in my area of interest, I'm going to choose any in the species drop-down list rather than particular species. And now I'm going to choose the place. So remember, I'm interested in just North Park in Allegheny County. So to do that, in the location drop-down list, I'll choose geography type. And then from there, it'll ask me about a conservation land. And I will choose the particular conservation land that I'm interested in, which was that North Park. It will also ask for the jurisdiction, which is simply referring to which state or province that place is located. And so that's here in Pennsylvania, of course. And so once you fill in all of that, it will basically know to hone in on that particular area that I'm interested in. That pretty much wraps up everything I wanted my alert to do. So I'm ready to save it. So there's a save button up there in the top right-hand corner. I'll click that, and it will officially save that alert that I'm interested in. Here's what the page will look like after I've saved my new alert. So now that I've set up that alert, when a new record is entered into iMapInvasives by, it doesn't matter who it is, it can be anybody, and it matches the criteria of my alert, I'll receive a notification in my email inbox letting me know what specific species was found, the date it was found on, and the specific location. So for this one, I'll know it's in North Park. It will also give me the record ID number so that I can go back into iMap and I can look at that record and I can see more information about it. So for other details like the actual person who submitted that record and the observation photos associated with it, I can access that just by logging in to iMapInvasives. I won't actually see that information in the email alert itself, but I'll have the record ID number, and so I'll be able to go in and look at that information very easily. So here in this example, I'm just saying that someone found Japanese barberry in North Park, and so that triggered my email alert that I wanted to be notified about. Keep in mind that once you create an alert, if down the road you no longer are interested in receiving that alert, you have two choices. You can either deactivate that alert, or you can completely delete it altogether. And so to deactivate an alert, if you go back into that email alert section and open up that particular alert that you would like to either deactivate or delete, there's a section there with a checkbox next to it. It says active. So if you uncheck that active box and save it, it will deactivate your alert. If you'd like to delete that alert, there is an X button above that word active. If you click that X button, it will completely delete your alert from your account. So you can do one or the other, whichever one you prefer. There's other types of alerts. I mean, the list is kind of endless as far as what you can do to customize these alerts. Here's just a few other examples to kind of get the wheels spinning as far as what might be of interest to you. So here I'm saying you can notify me if any invasive aquatic plant was found in Lake Pleasant, a particular water body in Erie County that's managed by the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy. If you're interested in a specific species like this one here, I'm saying notify me if tree of heaven is found in anywhere in a particular county. So for this one, I'm saying Somerset County in particular. If you're interested in hemlock woolly adelgid, you could say notify me if hemlock woolly adelgid is found in a particular game lands. Maybe you work for the Game Commission and you'd like to be able to keep up to date on that. You could also say notify me if or when water chestnut, which is still somewhat rare in Pennsylvania, is found for the first time in a particular county. So in this one, I'm saying Beaver County. So these are just some other examples of what you can do that might be of interest to you to set up an email alert. But again, the possibilities are basically endless as far as what kind of alerts you can set up. Okay, we talked about email alerts. I mentioned projects a little bit already during the training, but I do want to kind of delve into those a little bit more so you understand that and know if you'd like to create projects yourself based on some of the work that you're doing. Okay, so in iMap, a project is essentially a tool that can be used to compile similar data together for easy querying down the road. And here's just a few examples of how projects are currently being utilized in iMap. But again, the list is kind of endless, and the reasons for why you might want to create one are basically endless as well. So here in Allegheny County, we have the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy, and they utilize iMap and have created multiple projects based on particular sites that they are managing. So here I've listed just a few of those sites and the name that they've given them in iMap. So in Frick Park, they're managing places around 9 Mile Run. In Riverview Park, there's a place called the Chapel Shelter. And in Highland Park, there's the Velodrome Slopes. So all of these places, they're doing particular either survey or management efforts. And perhaps at the end of the year, they're interested in pulling data back out just for these particular sites. And so any data that they tag under a project, under one of these project names, they can then easily query for later on and pull that data out of iMap very easily. So that's how they're utilizing projects in iMap. We've also received several data sets from various people over the years that have conducted bioblitzes. And what we usually do in order to be able to easily pull that data back out just for a bioblitz is to create a specific project for it so that it's easy to find just that data apart from all the other data in the database. Also, we received data from the National Park Service in the past. They conducted an invasive species survey at the Flight 93 Memorial. And so again, to be able to look at just that data once we entered it into iMap was to create a project so that we could be able to conduct a query, pull that data back out, and then look at just that data. So if you're interested in being part of a project or creating a project, I'm going to show you how to go about doing that. So if you're logged into the main page of iMap, go to that upper left-hand corner menu and click on Projects. This is the screen that you'll see once you click on that. And from this view, you'll be able to see all the projects that are already in iMapInvasives. You'll be able to see the lead contacts and their associated organization if they have that listed. You can also click on any of the project names to read a little bit more about it, and also to view its members and partner organizations. So if you're curious about some of those other projects that are already here, this will be a way that you can learn more about that. So if you'd like to contribute or view data for an existing project that's already in that list, you can click on that project, and then there's a button near the top that says Request to Join Project, and you can click that button to request to be a member of that project. And once the leader of that project confirms you as a member, you are then able to contribute data and also view data for that project. Without being a member of a project, you will not be able to access it or contribute data to it, so keep that in mind. If you're interested in creating a brand new project, you can do that as well. And in the past, with iMap 2, this was something that the administrator, myself, needed to do for you. I needed to be notified of what the project was, its details. That is no longer the case. We wanted to, again, kind of make it a little bit easier for you as the registered user to go in and do this on your own without having to work through the administrator to get this set up. So if you click on that Create New Project button there at the top part of that screen, the following screen will show up, and it's going to give you various data fields to fill in. So it's going to ask you for the name of the project. It's going to ask you for a brief description of what it's about, the associated organization for the project, as well as its jurisdiction, which will likely be Pennsylvania, who the project leader is, and if there is a start date, sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't, and if there is a particular cost associated with this project, you can also list that as well. You also have the option at this point in time to add members to your project if you already have people in mind who should be able to either contribute or view data for this project. So keep in mind, to add a person as a member of your project, they already need to be a registered user of iMapInvasives. If they are not, their name will not show up on the list. So for anyone who doesn't already have a registered account that you would like to be part of your project, make sure that you ask them to go in and sign up for a free account. So once you do that, you can go through Add Members. Then it will also populate that Partner Organizations field based on what's in each person's unique profile. Okay, and once you've done all of that, you fill it in all those data fields, you fill it in who the members are that you want to have be members. You want to make sure to click that Save button up there at the top, and that will officially create your new project. At that point, you're ready to tell your members of your project to begin tagging appropriate data records to this project so that at the end of the year or whenever you want to run a query for this project, you can expect to see numbers show up and data show up on the map related to folks tagging that project under for certain data records that they enter. So to increase collaboration across various organizations that might choose to partner together, creating a project is something that really helps to increase that collaboration and make things a little bit easier for everybody. And I wanted to show you a few examples of what I mean by that and what that might actually look like. So this is just a fake example. I chose the Erie County Conservation District just to give a specific organization, but this is not necessarily something that they're doing, so I just want to point that out. So say the Erie County Conservation District is partnering with a local environmental consultant. And together, they create an iMap project that's related to a specific treatment effort that they are both working on. So by creating a project that both organizations can contribute data to in iMap, a query can then later be run to filter out just that data. And then that information can be used to create a map which would show the species that were treated and the impacted area. So again, because these two organizations are working together, they're partnering on this specific effort, they might not necessarily be interested in all of the other data that's in iMap submitted by various users. They're only interested in this specific data. So by putting it under a project, it makes that really easy to then pull that data back out and do with it as they would want to. Here's another example, just to give you something else to think about. So say, for example, 5 different grassroots organizations perform a survey at their local lake to better understand what aquatic invasive species are present there. So they create an iMap project that all of these different partnering organizations can contribute to. And then later, once they've got a lot of data tagged under that project, they perform a query in iMap to pull that data back out to then compile a specific report about this survey. And then that report is then utilized to apply for grant funding the following year to conduct treatment efforts after they have done their survey. So again, that's just another example, not necessarily a true example, but just something that could happen. And again, these are both just basic ideas that might help you to get your wheels turning as far as what kind of efforts you're involved with that might make sense to create projects for in iMap. Okay, I also want to talk a little bit about how to export data. So again, we have made data exporting easier for folks. You do not have to utilize myself as the administrator to pull data back out. That was the case in iMap 2, but that is different now in iMap 3. And you can pull data out in the form of a geodatabase, a shapefile, or an Excel spreadsheet. So in order to begin exporting data, you'll want to log into iMap like you do normally. And then you want to make sure that you're zooming in on the map to a particular area of interest. So I'm going to show you that. So first on that map, I'm going to zoom into Pennsylvania. We're still at that hexagon view. So I know I want to zoom in a little bit farther because I want to get to a more specific place. And here I'm zooming in specifically on the Allegheny National Forest located in northwest Pennsylvania. So from here, I can click that export button that's located there at the top right part of the screen, and I can export all the data that's in my current map extent. So anything that's viewable on my computer screen, essentially. And I can export that in a geodatabase, a shapefile, or an Excel file. Now keep in mind, this will show me data that is outside of the Allegheny National Forest, which is basically, in this example, my area of interest. And that's because currently we do not have those advanced querying capabilities built into iMap to be able to really filter out some of that other data that maybe I'm not necessarily interested in. But for the time being, this will at least get me what I want, and I can filter out as I see fit, basically. So keep in mind, starting hopefully sometime this fall or sometime in the winter, we will have more additional querying capabilities to help you to refine the kind of exports that you're doing. But just keep in mind, for the time being, you still can go in and export data, and this is how you would go about doing it. I just also want to mention that from this viewpoint, this zoomed out scale of the whole country, essentially, if I tried to do an export at this map extent, I would not be able to do it. It would give me an error message that says you need to zoom in a little bit farther. And the reason for that is we cap exports at a maximum of 10,000 records because we essentially want you to be sort of more specific as far as what data you're pulling out. And so just make sure you're zooming in on the map to a more specific location and you shouldn't have a problem with that. So I just want to go over in summary everything that we've talked about as far as iMap 3 and what you can do. So you can document your invasive species findings, both present and not detected. You can document your treatment efforts. You can go in and either become a member of an existing project, or you can go in and create and manage your own projects. You can go in to iMap and create these customized email alerts so you can be notified of when specific species are found, or if any species is found in an area of your particular interest. You can also go in and export specific data on your own. You do not need the help of the administrator to do that. And at this point in time, you can go in and perform basic queries, which would include searching for specific data records by their identification number, and you can also query for specific species distributions. Again, I just want to make note that because advanced querying capabilities are not yet in place, these basic queries are all that we have right now, but advanced querying should become available later this year, either in the fall or the winter. Okay, so that is the end of my presentation. I want to just open it up to questions by all of you. So if anyone has a question, you can ask me at this time, either using your computer's microphone, or you can use the chat box that's part of the WebEx system, and we'll take some time and answer your questions. And if there are no questions at this time, I will take that as a compliment to say that you guys understand everything incredibly well that we talked about today. If there is questions after today's webinar, my contact information is here. You can email me or give me a call here at the office. As you're starting to utilize iMap 3, if you haven't used it already and you come upon something that's confusing to you or something isn't working correctly, feel free to reach out to me at any time. This is a new platform. I mean, it just got launched in April of this year. So certainly there are still some bugs that are being worked out as we go through and find them. But just feel free to reach out to me with questions, and feel free to share the information that you learned today with others in your organization. And I hope it's been helpful to you all. And so I just want to say thank you again for attending, and have a great rest of your day.